I didn't expect much. That's the truth. It was my mum's 60th birthday, the kind of celebration where everyone wears white linen, drinks champagne with sea salt on the rim, and pretends they actually like each other. It was held at some beach resort. Richard booked a place so polished it made you feel underdressed no matter what you wore. I was early. Stupid move. There was a check-in table with name tags lined in gold trim. Welcome to Judith's 60th printed above each name. I scanned for mine and stopped cold. Ethan, the let-down 2 words. Neat. Serif font. I stared at it for a moment, wondering if it was a joke. I looked around, no smirks, no cameras. Just soft jazz and ocean breeze. But I knew who did it. I didn't need proof. Richard, my mum's husband for the past 15 years, always made subtle digs. The kind that made you question if you were being too sensitive. But labelling me like a party prop, that was bold even for him. I picked up the tag. My thumb brushed over the word let down, and for a second I could feel that familiar heat rise in my chest. Not rage, shame, that old itch of being less than, unwanted, forgettable. I set the tag back down, didn't break it, didn't throw it, just left it there, because I knew the second I let it get to me, I'd become exactly what they thought I was: emotional, weak, a joke. Instead, I walked into that party like I belonged. Even if I didn't, I remember when it started, not all at once, more like a slow fade, like someone dimming the lights on you until one day you're just standing in the dark. I was 11 when my mum married Richard. He was polite at first. A firm handshake, the kind of smile that's more teeth than warmth, said he was looking forward to being part of my life. I didn't buy it then, and I sure as hell don't now. A few months later, he moved in, and with him came his kids, Miles and Emily, the golden ones. Miles got a drum set before he even unpacked. Emily had ballet classes, private tutors, weekend painting retreats. I got told to stop being so intense whenever I asked for anything. You're older, my mum would say. Be patient. Let them adjust. But I wasn't older. Miles was the same age as me. Emily was only 2 years younger. That line was just code for, don't make things harder than they already are. Don't be a problem. I tried to blend in. Help out. Be the easy one. Didn't work. By high school, Richard had started calling me practical. Said I wasn't wired for the spotlight like the others. At family dinners, he'd brag about Miles's soccer goals, Emily's art awards. When I made honor roll, not a word. My mum, she didn't speak up. Maybe she didn't know how. Maybe it was easier to keep the peace, but I knew I was being erased. Bit by bit, the worst part, I started helping them do it. Stopped showing her my sketches. Quit track. I didn't want to give them anything else to ignore. Then came college. My mum had told me once that she had a fund saved from before Richard, said it was for me. You'll be the first in the family, she'd said. That matters. But when the time came, gone. You used to send Miles to school out of state. It was the right decision, Richard told me. You're clever, Ethan. You'll figure it out. And I did. Scholarships, loans. A job that bled me dry. I figured it out. Alone. The day I left home, it wasn't dramatic. No screaming match. No slammed doors. Just a backpack, a duffel, and the quiet understanding that if I stayed any longer, I'd forget how to be a person. I was 19. My mum stood by the kitchen window while I packed. She didn't say anything, didn't even look at me when I walked out. I thought maybe she'd stop me, ask if I needed help, or just say goodbye. But she didn't. Richard was out of town. Miles and Emily were upstairs. I left a note I doubt anyone ever read. My first apartment wasn't really an apartment. It was a converted garage behind a house that smelled like cat pee and mildew. The walls were so thin I could hear my neighbour's break-up playlist through the drywall every Sunday night. But it was mine. I took any job I could find: barista, delivery guy, night shift at a data entry firm where the only human interaction was restocking the vending machine. When I wasn't working, I studied. I barely slept, lived on caffeine and instant noodles. But every time I felt like quitting, I remembered Richard's smirk. I remembered that college fund with my name on it that got funneled into Miles's tuition. I remembered "you'll figure it out." And I did. 4 years later, I graduated from a state school with a degree in computer engineering. No party, no congratulations. Just me in a rental cap and gown, surrounded by strangers with teary-eyed parents. I wasn't bitter. Not that day. I felt light. I walked straight off that campus and into a job at a startup that went belly up in under 8 months. Then another one. And another. I worked for companies where I didn't matter and with people who didn't notice when I burned out. But I kept going. Because underneath all that fatigue and loneliness, I had a quiet hunger. I wasn't just trying to survive anymore. I wanted to build something. Year 6 on my own, I took my last freelance check and invested it in my own software platform. It was a risky move, the kind of gamble you make when you've already lived through worse. My landlord thought I was insane. My co-workers said I was brave. I was neither. I was desperate to stop being the guy who had to ask permission to be taken seriously. The platform was niche internal comms for distributed teams. Not sexy, not flashy, but it worked. It solved a problem I knew well: how to feel connected when no one sees you. I launched it with no fanfare, just a GitHub repo, a LinkedIn post, and a lot of sleepless nights. And somehow, it took off. By the end of the first year, I had clients. By the end of the second, I had a team. By year 3, I had options funding, buyout offers, partnership deals. I turned most of them down, not because I was stubborn, but because for the first time in my life, I didn't want someone else holding the pen. The only call I made was to my lawyer. I trademarked the brand, incorporated, set up payroll, and then I built a life around it. I rented a clean, modest apartment with windows that let the morning light in. I bought furniture that didn't come in flat pack boxes. I adopted a rescue dog named Griffin, who thinks I'm a superhero for taking him on walks. No one in my family knew. I never sent updates, never bragged, but I still got invites, birthdays, holidays. Anniversaries, they didn't want me there because they missed me. They wanted to look good. Richard especially, he liked to parade us all out, like trophies. His blended family, his success story. I skipped most of the events, blocked Emily on social media after she tagged me in a group photo I hadn't been in, declined every "we missed you" text that showed up from Miles with an emoji and 0 punctuation. I wasn't angry anymore, just uninterested. But every once in a while, I'd let curiosity win, just to see if anything had changed. Spoiler, it hadn't. At a Christmas brunch 3 years ago, Richard pulled me aside and asked if I was still doing that little contract work thing. He used the same voice people use when they ask if you still play in a garage band. When I told him I owned my own company, he blinked. Then he laughed. Really? Wow, that's unexpected. I just smiled. Good thing I've gotten used to that. Miles showed up in a new Tesla that same day. Emily had just returned from a creative retreat in Italy. My mum fussed over both of them. Didn't ask me a single question, not one. I left early, like always. After that, I stopped going entirely. I blocked the group chats, took my peace in full. Until the 60th birthday invite showed up last month. Not from my mum, not from Richard, From Emily, actually. Sent in a shiny Vite with seashell animations and a little blurb about celebrating the most loving, graceful woman we've ever known. I almost deleted it, but something stopped me. Maybe it was the address, some luxury resort in Florida. Maybe it was the phrase family celebration. Maybe it was the memory of how quiet my mum had been the day I left. I didn't know what I expected when I RSVP'd, yes, definitely not a name tag calling me a letdown. And yet, there it was. But here's the thing, that tag, it didn't sting the way it used to. Because in that moment, standing there at the check-in desk with champagne flutes clinking behind me and fake laughter echoing off polished marble walls, I realized something important. I didn't need to be part of their world anymore. I had built my own. I didn't plan to say anything, really. I came with the full intention of staying quiet, sipping overpriced champagne, making a ghostly appearance, and slipping out before dessert. In and out, no drama. That was the idea. But something shifted. It wasn't just the name tag, though, that helped. It was the way people looked through me, like I was a placeholder in a chair. It was the way Richard held court in the centre of the room, laughing too loud, talking too much, while Mum hovered behind him like a polished accessory. It was Emily introducing a slideshow of our most cherished family moments, where I showed up exactly twice, once as a blurry kid in the background, and once with my face cropped halfway off. That's when I felt it. Not rage, not sadness, clarity. I excused myself, stepped out onto the deck overlooking the beach, and let the night air cool the tension in my chest. The waves were soft, the sky a deep indigo. I could have left then, could have driven back to the airport and vanished all over again, but I didn't. Instead, I turned around and walked back into that room. I don't know what they were expecting when I picked up a glass and gently tapped a butter knife against its rim. The sound was light, just enough to make a few heads turn, then more. Eventually, the room went quiet. All eyes on me, just like they never were before. Richard raised a brow. Miles blinked like I'd startled him. Emily tilted her head with a tight hostess smile. And my mum just looked tired. I cleared my throat. "I'll keep this short," I said, voice steady. "I know I'm not exactly the star of tonight's slideshow." A few awkward chuckles. Someone muttered something that sounded like, "Here we go." But I figured since we're all gathered here to celebrate a woman who means so much to this family, I'd say a few words. Pause. My hand didn't shake. Not this time. I grew up believing that family meant support, that it meant showing up, listening, remembering the things that matter to each other. I let that settle. And for a while, I thought the problem was me, that I hadn't earned my place at the table, that if I just worked harder, stayed quieter, made fewer waves, maybe then I'd be seen. I scanned the room. Not one person moved. But I learned something, eventually. Sometimes it's not about how hard you try. Sometimes it's just that the room was never built for you to belong in. The silence grew heavier. Miles looked down. Emily shifted uncomfortably. Richard took a sip of his drink like that would make me disappear. Mum still hadn't blinked. "I want to say thank you," I said, voice calm. "Because every dismissal, every time I was left off the list, every dollar diverted from my future into someone else's dreams, it taught me how to stand on my own, how to build something from nothing, how to exist without needing anyone's permission." Now Richard was glaring. Emily had stopped pretending to smile. Someone gasped when I raised my glass. So here's to that, to being the letdown, to wearing the label and still walking taller than the ones who gave it to me. I lifted the glass slightly, just enough. "Happy birthday, Mom." That was all. I placed the glass back on the table without drinking, without waiting for applause or rebuttal, just a quiet clink. Final. And then I turned and walked away from the centre of the room. I could feel the ripples behind me, the murmurs, the stunned expressions, the heat of eyes burning into my back. I didn't care. I passed the check-in desk again on my way out. The tag was still there. Ethan, the letdown. Still sitting perfectly aligned with the others like it belonged. I smiled and left it untouched. The valet didn't look up when I handed him my ticket. The engine of my rental purred to life, the lights casting gold against the resort's marble pillars. As I pulled away, I saw someone run out behind me, Emily, heels in one hand, the other waving. I didn't stop. She called my name once. I kept driving. I don't know what she wanted to say. Maybe an apology. Maybe a question. Maybe just damage control. Didn't matter. Because for once, I hadn't raised my voice. I hadn't begged. I hadn't needed them to see me. I saw myself. And that was enough. The drive back from the resort felt different. Lighter. Not euphoric, not triumphant, just still. I didn't blast music. I didn't rehearse what I could have said differently. I just drove with the windows cracked open, letting the night air carry the salt and silence through. I thought I'd feel regret, guilt, maybe. That inner voice that always whispered, "You shouldn't have gone there. You stirred the pot again." But it never came. For once, the silence wasn't empty. It was mine. When I got back to my apartment, Griffin met me at the door, tail wagging like I hadn't just dropped a truth bomb in a 5-star resort ballroom. I gave him a long scratch behind the ears, and we curled up on the couch like it was just another night. My phone buzzed, and buzzed again. At first, I didn't check. I knew who it was. There's a certain rhythm to family fallout. It starts with confusion, then indignation, then a desperate push to get ahead of the story. By morning, I had 17 missed calls, 3 from my mum, 6 from Emily, 1 from Richard, which I didn't even know was possible because the man never dialed his own phone. The rest were unknown numbers, probably cousins or Miles, or someone from the family PR committee. I didn't open any of the voicemails. Instead, I made coffee, took Griffin for a walk, answered work emails, paid my team their quarterly bonuses, normal life stuff. When I finally opened my phone, the messages were exactly what I expected. "Emily, you seriously embarrassed Mum. Was that your goal? Mum, please call me. We need to talk. This can't be how things end. Richard, what you did was inappropriate and selfish. Grow up." I almost laughed. Inappropriate? For reading the label they gave me out loud. I blocked Richard first. Then Emily. I hesitated on my mum. Her last message was simple, Ethan. I didn't know about the tag. Maybe that was true. Maybe it wasn't. But she didn't take it off the table either. So I blocked her too. And just like that, the line went quiet. No more pings, no more calls. No more carefully curated invites to events where I was only welcome as a prop for the happy family image. A week passed. Then 2. I kept waiting for the guilt to hit. That deep ache in the chest that tells you you're missing something essential, but instead I felt clarity, peace that didn't beg for a second opinion. It was quiet. Solid. A room with the door finally closed, the echo gone. That's not to say it didn't haunt me in small moments. Sometimes I'd walk past a family laughing in a restaurant window, or hear someone say "Mom" with ease, and it would sting just a little, like pressing on a bruise that's mostly healed, but not quite gone. But then I'd come home, and Griffin would nuzzle into my side, or I'd get a message from a client raving about how our platform helped them feel connected across oceans. And I'd remember, I made this life. I earned this peace. No one handed it to me, no trust fund, no quiet connections, no family name to drop in job interviews. Just me, clawing my way through bad Wi-Fi, stacked dishes, and late-night self-doubt. People like Richard will never understand that kind of success. He only values what he can control. And I'd slipped through his fingers before he ever realized I was holding my own reins. Sometimes I wondered if my mum would try again. A letter, a holiday card, a surprise visit. She didn't. And maybe that hurt more than it should have. But the truth is, silence can be an answer too. In some ways, I think she chose comfort over truth. Richard over confrontation. And maybe that's who she always was. I spent my whole life thinking that if I just proved myself, if I just became someone worth noticing, she'd turn around. But she didn't. And that's not on me anymore. So I moved on. I hired a new operations lead for my company and started planning our first off-site retreat, nothing fancy, just a cabin in the mountains with Wi-Fi and good coffee. I made time for hobbies again. Started sketching like I used to as a kid, back when I thought being good at something meant being loved for it. Now I just draw because I want to. And on the first weekend of spring, I took Griffin to the beach. We sat there for hours, no calls, no expectations, no roles to perform. Just sand, sky, and the slow, calming sound of waves, erasing every footprint that came before. There, with my sneakers off and salt air in my lungs, I whispered something to no one in particular. I'm not the letdown. You were. Not out of spite, not even for closure, just truth. And truth finally was enough. Story 2, I used to think grief made people more honest. Turns out, it just makes good liars harder to spot. When my sister Avery told us she had 6 months to live, I didn't hesitate. I paused my life, dropped out of a dream tech program, and moved back home. She needed help, and I was going to be there because what kind of person wouldn't? We threw her a party, a farewell of sorts. 3-tier cake, glittery balloons, the words "Our Warrior Queen" written in gold fondant across the top. I remember standing by the fridge, watching her bask in the spotlight, soft pink dress glowing under fairy lights, tiara crooked like a Hallmark movie character. The room was full of hushed awe. Her eyes glistened like someone had just whispered the words, only a few days left, not 6 months, which, ironically, she had already survived. She looked radiant, tragic, exactly how a terminally ill person should look in a Lifetime original. My cousin snapped a picture of the cake like it was a wedding. My aunt whispered something about angels. My mum served sugar-free brownies because Avery couldn't handle sugar anymore. Wild, considering I literally caught her sneaking a Snickers under her blanket the night before. She winked when she saw me watching. I smiled, the kind of tight-lipped smile you give someone when you're not sure if you're complicit or just being played. She made her rounds, thanking guests like she was the Pope. When she got to me, she touched my arm like I was a childhood friend who travelled across the country to visit. "I'm so glad you came," she said, voice dripping with gratitude. "I live here," I reminded her. She smiled like I'd made a joke. "Still," she said, "it means everything." She was good, too good. Back in middle school, she won a trophy for a 10-minute solo about a dying kitten. Had half the auditorium in tears. Thing is, the kitten never existed. Neither did the limp she faked for dramatic flair. At the time, we thought it was harmless method acting, just theatre kid stuff. But this was different. At the party, she gave a speech, of course, thanked everyone for their support, cried at just the right moments. And when she turned to me, she said on mic, with the whole room watching to my sister, who gave up everything for me, "I couldn't have done this without you." Applause. tears. People turned to me like I was Mother Teresa. I nodded, said thanks. And then I walked into the hallway, pulled out my phone and handed it to my cousin Nathan, one of the few tech-literate members of our family. "Can you play this for everyone?" He squinted at the screen. "What is it? Just hit play." The music from the Bluetooth speaker cut out. The video started. I stayed in the hallway. Didn't need to see it. I'd watched it enough. I just needed to watch her. Avery froze. Her posture stiffened. Her smile didn't fall, it shattered. Her eyes darted around like she was searching for the remote or the exit. Somewhere, someone dropped a fork. Then her voice, her real voice, came over the speaker. Not crying, not weak, not dying, just normal, confident, practicing lines. Things like, "I'm scared this will be my last Thanksgiving," and try saying, "Stage 4 next people respond more when it sounds urgent." A laugh followed. "Someone just sent me a handmade quilt for my hospital bed. I don't even have one." Silence. You could hear the tension snap. Avery stepped toward me. "What did you do?" she hissed. "I didn't say a word." "You edited that," she snapped. "You always hated me. You're obsessed." The room began to murmur. "Don't lie to me," she shouted. "Turn it off! Turn it off!" She lunged for Nathan's phone, but he backed away. The video played on. People gasped. Whispers turned to full-on murmurs. One of our uncles looked like he was going to be sick. I watched Avery crumble. This wasn't a cough or a limp or a headscarf. This was exposure, and it was only the beginning. When I walked out that night, I didn't slam the door. I didn't yell. I just left. The sound of Avery's voice yelling, "Turn it off," followed me down the steps and out into the night like smoke from a fire I didn't start. For the next 3 days, nobody said a word to me. No texts. No calls. Not even a passive-aggressive emoji on the family group chat. You'd think someone might reach out, considering the fact that the supposed terminal patient was just outed in front of 30 people with a highlight reel of her lies. But nope, radio silence. I wasn't surprised. Denial is strong. And in our family, Avery was the sun, and the rest of us just revolved around her. That kind of orbit makes it hard to look directly at the truth. My parents were. Well, upset would be putting it gently. They didn't ask about the video. They didn't ask where I got the audio or how long I'd known. Instead, my mum called and said, "You didn't have to embarrass her like that." I stared at the phone in disbelief. She faked cancer. "She's not well," she said, voice all tight and trembling, like I'd punched Avery in the throat instead of exposing a scam. My dad didn't even speak to me. Just sent a one-line message. "This isn't how family handles things." I didn't reply, because honestly, they weren't acting like family when I gave up my scholarship. When I spent 6 months spoon-feeding lies to Avery under the label of chamomile tea. When I kept track of her pill schedule and drove her to non-existent appointments with doctors that didn't exist. And it's not like I hadn't noticed things before. I did. It started with the weird little inconsistencies, like the way she'd limp when people visited, but walk just fine to the bathroom. Or how she always had a reason why no one could come to her appointments. Or how she'd cry into my mum's shoulder, saying she couldn't keep any food down, and then sneak a burger in the garage an hour later. I kept notes. Not because I thought I'd ever use them, just because something felt off. I titled the list Weird Avery Stuff. It started small. Said she couldn't digest sugar. Ate 3 cupcakes in secret claim stage, 3 diagnosis. Told friend it was stage 4, forgot medical file again. Had same excuse for 5th time. It piled up. But it wasn't until I found her second phone, that everything truly snapped into focus. It was sitting on the counter like it had been casually left there. Not her regular phone, this one was newer, white, with no case. I picked it up thinking maybe a guest left it behind, but when I tapped the screen, I saw the wallpaper, a picture of Avery. Same glittery background, same lock screen pin. Curiosity took over. I unlocked it. What I found made my stomach twist. There was an email app open. The account, Dr. Collins, oncology@mail.com, the very same doctor who had been sending us updates on her declining health, the same name that appeared on all the printouts she shared, all the voice messages she played, all the notes she posted to her fundraising pages. Except the recovery email on the account, Avery's. Her voice was there too, recordings she made, practicing lines, rehearsing different tones, a nasal doctor voice, a crying patient voice, even the laughing one where she said, "These people are eating it up. I should have gone into acting." That's when it hit me. This wasn't desperation. This was performance. Every limp, every "I'm just trying to stay strong" moment, all of it, fake. I didn't confront her right away. I didn't yell or throw the phone across the room. I just sat down at the kitchen table, phone in hand, and cried. Not because I was shocked, but because I wasn't. Some part of me had always known. She'd been doing this her whole life, just in smaller doses, faking tears to get out of trouble, fainting once in high school because someone else won the lead in the school play. She needed attention the way most people need air. And I had played my part like a pro. When I gave up my dream program, no one questioned it. When I stayed up night after night, making her herbal tea and rubbing her back while she struggled to sleep, no one asked how I was holding up. I didn't just disappear from my life. I was erased from it. And she just kept glowing. Every interview, every donation, every tearful update. She wore her fake pain like a crown and got praised for her strength while I stood behind the curtain making it all possible until I couldn't anymore. The final straw wasn't the fake doctor. It wasn't even the second phone. It was the folder on her laptop labelled scripts. Inside were voice memos, written speeches, even cues like pause here to cry and add shaky breath. She had rehearsed everything. There was even one labelled backstory, childhood trauma, V2 use, if asked in interviews. That's when I realised Avery didn't think she was lying. She thought she was acting, like life was just one long audition, and the rest of us were props in her scene. So I made copies, emails, audio screenshots, all of it. Then I made a call. Not to her. Not to my parents. To someone else. A reporter. He'd done a piece on her a year ago, a local segment about her strength and grace and how she was raising awareness for rare cancers. I emailed him the files and said, "If you want the truth, I have it." He responded within the hour. And just like that, the curtain started to fall. The news piece aired 2 days after the party. It wasn't dramatic. No flashing headlines or explosive exposes. Just a soft-spoken reporter showing side-by-side clips. Avery reading her fake diagnosis on TikTok, followed by her voice rehearsing the same lines on a voice memo. Her doctor email pulled up next to the recovery email, listed under her name. Footage of her limping into the living room, then walking normally through the kitchen minutes later. No music, no narration, just facts. And that was enough. By the next morning, her GoFundMe was shut down. Donors wanted refunds. Local charities that had once sent her care packages were deleting her photo from their websites. A few even issued public apologies. Avery, meanwhile, disappeared. She left the house the day after the segment aired. Didn't say where she was going. My mum told the neighbours she just needed time away from the noise. Noise apparently meaning consequences. Her husband filed for separation. I didn't expect that part. He'd always seemed so devoted. Blind, maybe, but loyal. He called me the night he moved out. I thought he might yell, blame me. But his voice just sounded tired. She told me she was dying, he said. I believed her. He paused. You believed her too, didn't you? I didn't answer, because I had for too long. Meanwhile, my parents were scrambling. Mum was in full damage control mode. She called donors, said Avery had been under emotional stress, that someone gave her bad advice, that maybe it wasn't as black and white as it looked. Dad stayed quiet. When I asked him if he was okay, he just said, "Your mother's handling it," like the entire situation was a leaky pipe and not a years-long deception built on sympathy and glitter. They didn't ask if I was okay, didn't ask how it felt to give up my future for someone who was never sick, or how it felt to be called jealous and selfish for not clapping hard enough during her speeches. Instead, my mum left a voicemail. "We're very disappointed in how you handled this." Not what Avery did. Just how I made it public. I listened to it twice, then I deleted it. Because I wasn't sorry. I didn't out Avery for revenge. I did it because I was drowning in a lie that no one else seemed willing to see. Because I couldn't keep living inside someone else's performance. And yeah, part of me wanted people to finally believe me. To see that I wasn't just the moody sister in the corner, rolling my eyes while Avery coughed into her sleeve. I was the one who fed her, cleaned up after her, cancelled plans for her, and held her hand while she pretended to be dying. You can only be invisible for so long before it eats at you. So, no. I didn't regret the reveal. If anything, I regretted waiting so long to speak. A few weeks later, the police followed up. Turns out, when you raise tens of thousands of dollars under false medical pretenses, that's not just unethical, it's criminal. Fraud, wire fraud, to be exact. There were receipts. Her spending history showed skincare products, spa treatments, designer pajamas. One transaction even showed 2 concert tickets for a show she claimed she was too weak to attend. The authorities offered a plea deal. No jail time, but she had to pay restitution, undergo therapy, and do community service. Avery took it. She didn't reach out to me, didn't apologize, didn't explain. She just vanished. No social media, no updates, no carefully curated videos of her blinking back tears with lo-fi music in the background. Gone. My parents still send me the occasional update, like I might want to know how she's doing in counselling or that she's working at a food bank now. Like any of that changes what happened. It doesn't. Because here's the part no one likes to say out loud. Not everything is forgivable. And not every relationship is salvageable just because you share blood. The truth is, I stopped expecting apologies a long time ago. Stopped needing validation from people who only saw me when I was useful. I used to think calling someone family meant you owed them loyalty, no matter what. Now I know better. Family should mean safety. It should mean being believed. It should mean being seen. After the story died down and the camera crews moved on, I sat alone in my apartment and tried to feel something. Relief, closure, maybe even peace. But all I felt was hollow. It wasn't dramatic. Just quiet, like the lights had finally gone out in a theatre I never wanted to be in. And slowly that hollow space started filling with something else. Not anger. Not grief, just space. Space to breathe. To exist outside of someone else's spotlight. Time passed. Not a lot, not all at once. Just enough for the dust to settle and the silence to feel less like punishment and more like peace. The weird part? No one really checked in on me. Not after the video, not after the news story, not even after Avery left. It was like once the illusion shattered, everyone scattered. Maybe they didn't know what to say. Maybe they didn't want to admit they'd been fooled. Or maybe they still thought I'd gone too far, like the truth was worse than the lie because it was inconvenient. Mum sent a text on my birthday. Just 5 words, hope you're well. We think of you. I read it once and never replied. Not out of spite. Just. I didn't have anything left to say. Because the version of me they remembered, the one who gave without asking, who stayed quiet so others could shine, she was gone. I didn't kill her. I just stopped feeding her. And without all that noise, I finally had room to listen to myself again. I went back to school. Same scholarship, same program, different person. Turns out they'd held my spot. I remember walking into orientation, half expecting someone to pull me aside and say, "Sorry, mistake." But they didn't. They handed me a schedule and a student ID, and just like that, I was no longer someone's caregiver or sidekick or emotional punching bag. I was just me. It was weird in the beginning. Sitting in classes with people who didn't know anything about my family or the video or the lie that nearly took my life along with hers, it felt like walking into a clean room after years of smoke. Nobody looked at me like I owed them something. Nobody cried on cue or asked me to fetch tea while they practiced dying. It was quiet, and I didn't realize how badly I needed quiet until I had it. I started writing again, not about Avery, not about the fake cancer or the second phone or the folder full of lies. I wrote about characters who lived, characters who got back up, characters who healed. And one day, I got invited to speak on a panel about truth-telling and emotional abuse. It wasn't a huge event, just a local thing at a community college, but after the talk, a young woman came up to me and said, "I didn't know what was happening to me until I heard your story." She didn't cry. I didn't hug her. We just looked at each other like people who understood, and that was enough. Because I didn't need Avery to suffer, didn't need her to grovel or post an apology video or beg for forgiveness. I didn't even need my parents to finally pick me first. I just needed to stop bleeding for people who never offered me a bandage. That was the shift. That's when everything got lighter. Avery is still out there somewhere. From what I've heard, she's going through therapy. She paid some of the restitution. She hasn't posted online in months. And that's fine. That's her path now. I don't wish her harm. But I don't owe her healing either. And my parents? They haven't changed. Not really. They talk about Avery like she just went through something, like her crimes were symptoms of a rough patch instead of a blueprint of manipulation. I don't fight them on it. I don't need to. That's the thing about truth once it's out. It doesn't need defending. It just lives. And so do I. Some nights I still think about the party, the cake, the tiara, the way everyone clapped for her and looked at me like I was the lucky one, the supportive sister, the hero in the background. I wonder if any of them think back to that moment, now that they know what was really playing behind the scenes. Probably not. People don't like rewriting their own memories. It's easier to pretend they never saw the cracks, that it was all one big misunderstanding. But I remember everything. I remember the weight of the tea mug in my hands, the ache in my back after cleaning up her messes, the way she looked at me not like a sister, but like a stagehand she expected to be invisible. And I remember what it felt like to finally walk away. Not storm out, not burn bridges, just walk, step by step out of the lie into something real, something mine. If you're reading this and wondering if I ever got justice, yeah, I did. Not the kind that ends in a courtroom or a headline, but the kind that lets you sleep again, the kind that lets you laugh without guilt, love without strings, and wake up without dread. So no, I don't think I went too far. I think I finally went far enough. And I didn't run, I walked. Story 3. I still remember the smell of lemon and rosemary when I walked through the door. My mum always lit candles for special occasions, but I should have taken it as a red flag, not a warm welcome. That night was supposed to be a celebration. My debut novel had just been published after 3 years of rejection letters, rewrites, and quiet desperation. I didn't expect balloons or a marching band, but a little pride from my family didn't seem like too much to ask. I even brought a bottle of wine, hoping this would finally be the moment they'd see me. Really see me. Big mistake. Look who made it. My mum chirped from the kitchen. Too cheerful, too rehearsed. My sister Dani swirled her red wine like she was hosting a Food Network segment. You look professional, she said, as if I'd arrived in a clown suit instead of a tailored blazer. My younger brother Colin barely looked up from his phone. Made a playlist, he said. Early 2000s jams. Back when you were still scribbling in those weird notebooks, I forced a smile. The kind you give when it's easier to go along than explain why that stung. Dinner was served. Toasts were made. My mum mentioned how I always had a lot of feelings as a kid. Dani joked that she couldn't believe a book that actually made it into a store had come from me. Everyone laughed, like that was charming. Like I should be flattered. But I played along. I had news, big news. I'd just signed a second book deal with a major publisher. Twice the advance. A more personal story. I planned to announce it after dessert, maybe even read a little from the acknowledgements I had secretly written for them. That version of me, hopeful, optimistic, deserved better. Colin stood up, holding a book from the console table near the door. Mind if I read something aloud, he said, flipping it open. I nodded, naive. He'd never cared about my writing before, so I was flattered, until he read the first sentence. It wasn't my novel. I froze. 2 lines in, I knew the voice, the rhythm, the rawness. He was reading from my old diary. The room was quiet for a beat, then Dani burst out laughing. My mum gasped and covered her mouth, not in horror but amusement. My uncle leaned in, like it was theatre. Colin gave it a dramatic flair, reading lines that exposed every insecurity, every crush, every secret I'd buried in ink when I was 16. I think if I disappeared, nobody would notice for at least 3 days, he read, putting on a tragic voice. Dani wheezed. My uncle asked if I'd be signing diary copies too. I didn't scream. I didn't cry. I just walked over, took the diary from Colin's hands and walked outside. No one followed me. I sat on the steps, cold air biting my skin. My hands were shaking, but I didn't drop the diary. Instead, I opened my phone, not to scroll, not to call anyone, just to do one quiet thing, one irreversible thing, something that would change everything. The thing is, that diary moment, that wasn't the beginning. It was the encore. The truth is, I'd been the punchline long before I knew the word boundary. I was the kid who cried too easily, who asked too many questions, who made up stories and talked to herself in the mirror. They didn't hit me or scream at me. That would have been easier to name. Instead, they erased me slowly until I was visible only when I was ridiculous. Colin used to mimic me reading aloud until I locked myself in the bathroom and missed dinner. Dani told people I was quirky in the same tone you'd use to describe a stray dog. My dad once said, "Let's focus on passing science before you try to be a novelist." When I told them my dream at 13, they called it teasing. I called it erasure. Still, I kept writing. Notebooks, margins, church bulletins, I filled every inch with thoughts I wasn't brave enough to say aloud. That diary? It held every truth I never dared speak. And now it had been passed around like a party favour. That night, after the laughter, after the humiliation, I did more than just sulk. I made a choice. I didn't send a dramatic message. I didn't post a vague quote online. I opened my banking app and started cutting ties. Colin's tuition payments, gone. Danny's emergency fund transfers, cancelled. My co-signature on the family's utilities, revoked. I even called my lawyer to send one final message: cease all informal family obligations, effective immediately. At first, nothing happened. They went about their lives as if nothing had changed. My mum texted a blurry photo of the cake. Danny posted a group pic captioned, "So proud of our little author." Collins sent a text saying he had ideas for my next book. They didn't even realise the money had stopped, but they would. Oh, they would. It took 4 days before the cracks started showing. Colin was the first. He texted, "Hey, weird question, did something happen with the tuition account? I just got a notice about payment being late. Thought maybe it was a glitch." I didn't respond. Then Danny messaged in the family group chat, asking if I could Venmo her for Kai's daycare just until Friday. Said she was in a pinch. No response from me. Mum called that night. I didn't answer. She followed up with a voicemail. "Hi honey, just wondering if the monthly transfer is delayed. We're a little tight this month, that's all. No pressure. No pressure." That was rich, considering they'd leaned on me for years and never once called it what it was. Dependence, not love, not loyalty, just a financial lifeline they thought would never break. Here's what they didn't know. While they laughed at me over wine and cake, while Colin read out my fears like monologue practice, I was already setting everything in motion. Every single support beam they leaned on, I'd been the one holding it up. Groceries, electric bills, Colin's laptop and half his rent, Danny's car insurance, the cushion fund that kept Mum and Dad from defaulting on a mortgage they never should have refinanced. I had turned myself into a silent safety net, a ghost accountant with no name, just numbers. They never thanked me. They never even asked if I was okay. They just assumed. And when they had the chance to say something meaningful, really meaningful on the biggest night of my life, what did they do? They humiliated me. So no, I didn't forget to send the money. I turned off the faucet, quietly, completely. And that silence, it was louder than any speech I could have given. 2 weeks later, the panic hit full stride. I got a text from Colin at 2 a.m. "Seriously, did you cancel my tuition support? My portal is locked. I can't register for midterms. I left it on read." Then came the voicemail from Dad. "We need to talk. This situation isn't sustainable. You've made your point, but we've always worked as a unit, and I think you've forgotten that." Ah, yes, a unit. The only time they pulled that word out was when something was missing, usually money. Danny took a different route. She showed up at my apartment unannounced, knocked like she was ordering a pizza. I didn't open the door. She shouted through it. "You don't get to do this, Alyssa. You don't get to just walk away from this family like we're disposable." That word, disposable. She had the nerve. I stood behind the door, arms crossed, heart calm for the first time in months. Then came the note, slipped under the door like we were in middle school. "You're being selfish. You're letting this family fall apart. You've changed." No, I hadn't changed. I'd stopped pretending. The smear campaign started next. First, it was subtle. A colleague forwarded me an email he received anonymous, of course hinting I was mentally unstable and fixated on childhood slights. No names, no direct insults, just enough to plant seeds of doubt. I didn't have to guess where it came from. My uncle has always fancied himself a concerned citizen when he's not too busy gossiping at funerals. Then came the social media whispers, fake accounts posting old photos of me as a teenager. A grainy shot of me sitting cross-legged on my bedroom floor, surrounded by books and notebooks. The caption, "This is the real her. Don't be fooled by the polished version." What they didn't realise is that picture wasn't embarrassing to me. It was proof. Proof that I'd always been this girl, quiet, observant, writing even when no one was reading. They thought they were dragging me, but they were just showing the world what I survived. So I called my lawyer. We'd already filed formal notices to stop all financial obligations. But now it was time to make some noise. I sent him everything: emails, screenshots, voice memos, even that passive-aggressive note Danny slipped under my door. We prepared a defamation and harassment suit. This time, it wouldn't be a silent retreat. It would be a line in the sand. 3 days before the papers were served, Danny came back. She was crying. Not her usual tears for show. Real ones. Shoulders shaking. Mascara running. "I didn't know," she said. "I didn't know it would go this far. I didn't think they'd turn it into this." I believed her. But it didn't matter. I looked her in the eye and said the one thing I'd been holding back since that night. "You laughed the loudest." She flinched. No yelling, no dramatics. Just the truth, cold and clean. Then I closed the door. The lawsuit landed in their laps 3 days later. Formal, legal, sharp, not just a cease and desist this time, a full case. Defamation, harassment, and intentional emotional distress. It didn't make headlines, but it didn't have to. My publisher knew. My team knew. People who mattered knew. And the ones who had taken and taken without remorse. They finally went silent. After the legal papers were served, everything got quiet. No more texts. No more surprise visits. No more guilt-drenched voicemails or blurry cake photos pretending nothing happened. For the first time in years, I woke up and didn't brace for a request. The air in my apartment felt different, still. Like the pause after a long storm, when all you hear is your own breath again. I should have felt triumphant, vindicated even. But what I really felt, free. Like I'd stopped auditioning for a role I never signed up for, the good one, the helper, the fixer, the ghost with a checkbook. Nobody had ever asked what it cost me. They just kept holding out their hands, and I kept filling them, hoping maybe this time they'd look up and see me. Not anymore. About a month later, I passed a bookstore downtown. My book was right there in the front window. Center display, bestseller sticker gleaming like it belonged there. I didn't take a photo, didn't text anyone, just stood there and breathed it in. This moment, it was mine, all mine. No one else's fingerprints on it. No borrowed money or forced support or pity posted Facebook captions. Just me, my words, my name. I bought a copy with cash, tucked it into my coat like a secret, and walked out into the cool air. And I swear, for the first time since I was a teenager, I didn't feel like I owed anyone anything. But if you think the story ends there, you don't know my family. They didn't disappear. Not really, because when people like that lose control over you, they don't go quietly. They get louder in the shadows. It started with a journalist I'd worked with once. She sent me a heads up. Someone claiming to be a family friend reached out, said they had concerns about your past. I didn't entertain it, but I thought you should know. Attached was an email filled with the same tired lines. She hasn't always been stable. There are things readers don't know. We're just worried. That word again. They used it like a weapon, soft enough to sound caring, sharp enough to do damage. I said thank you and forwarded it to my lawyer. Then came the Twitter accounts, fake ones, all new. Same tone, same energy. Don't be fooled by the hype. She's not who she pretends to be. One even posted a cropped photo from middle school. Me sitting cross-legged, notebooks stacked around me like a fortress. They thought it was a gotcha. But to me, that photo was everything. It was proof. Proof that even back then, before they mocked me, before they laughed at my writing, before the dinner table humiliation, I was already building a life on the page. A quiet one, a brave one. So I didn't hide it. I used it. I shared that photo myself. Captioned it, "This is the real me." Always has been. Not perfect. Not polished. Just a girl who believed her voice mattered even when no one else did. Thousands of likes, hundreds of comments. People shared their own stories, their own photos, their own silence. Turns out, I wasn't the only one who'd been laughed at by people who said they loved them. But still, there was one more move left to make. Because they hadn't just tried to humiliate me. They tried to ruin me, quietly, behind closed doors. So I made it loud. My lawyer gathered everything. Emails, texts, timestamps, fake accounts, metadata, even voice memos of things said off the record. We weren't just sending cease and desists anymore. We were pressing charges for harassment, for defamation, for emotional interference in my professional life. Danny came to my door again before the filing could go through. This time, she didn't scream. She cried. Really cried. "I didn't know it would go this far," she said, voice shaking. I thought it was a joke. I didn't think it would hurt you this much." She looked up at me like we were still kids, like we could maybe undo all of it with one tear-streaked apology. But I didn't budge. "You thought it was a joke?" I asked, voice calm. She nodded. "Well, I hope it was worth it," I said, and closed the door. 3 days later, the suit was filed. No headlines, no media circus, just a quiet, calculated move. They panicked behind the scenes, I'm sure of it. Legal reps reached out. Emails were exchanged. Offers to settle came fast and stiff. I declined every one. I didn't want their money. I wanted their silence. Eventually, they backed down. They deleted the fake posts, withdrew the emails, sent generic apologies through their lawyers like someone had carved them into stone with gritted teeth. But more than anything, they vanished. From my inbox, from my life, from my mind. And that was the most peaceful part of all. It's been over a year now. I haven't seen any of them, not in person, not even from a distance. They're like shadows I finally stepped out from. Mum and Dad lost the house. I didn't celebrate it, but I didn't mourn it either. Turns out you can only refinance so many times before the bank stops listening to your stories. They moved into a much smaller place. They still call it temporary, like pride can cover rent. Colin dropped out 2 semesters later. Apparently, when someone else isn't quietly paying your tuition, school gets a lot harder. Last I heard, he's working at a bar downtown. I wish I could say he found his footing, but the truth is, some people don't fall until the net's gone. Danny's working at a call centre now. She hates it. I know because she posts vague quotes on social media. Stuff like, "Family should be everything. Money doesn't buy love. Real ones stay." She's not subtle. Never was. Her kid's doing okay, though. I send birthday gifts quietly. No return address. No note. Just something small, wrapped with care. The kid didn't choose any of this. And me? I'm good. Not movie montage happy. Not some glowing, flawless version of success. Just settled. Quiet, steady. I live in a space that feels like mine. Work that's honest. Friends who see me. A name on a book that no one else can claim. The second book sold out before it even launched. It wasn't about them, not exactly, but they're in there, in the silences, in the backstory, in the girl who learned to hold her voice like a weapon and a shield. They thought they broke me, but what they really did was push me far enough to stop begging to be seen. Sometimes I think about that diary, the real one, the one Colin read like it was comedy gold, the one with my secrets, my fears, my small truths. It's in a fireproof box now, right next to my second book contract. Sometimes I take it out, not often, but once in a while I flip to the page they mocked the most, the one where I wrote, I think if I disappeared, no one would notice until dinner. And I read it out loud, not because it hurts anymore, but because I survived her. The girl who wrote that line, she didn't vanish. She grew up, she walked away, and for the first time in her life, she stopped asking for permission. They used to laugh when I told the truth. So this time, I didn't tell them anything. I just acted. That's the part they didn't understand. Some silence isn't weakness, it's power. They paid for my silence. With consequences, with distance, with every message that went unanswered. Do I ever wonder if I went too far? Sure, I'm human. Some nights, when the city is quiet and the stars come out like they used to when I was a kid lying in the backyard, I wonder if cutting the cord completely was too harsh, if I could have given them one more chance. But then I remember that night, the candles, the laughter, my voice being used as a punchline, and nobody standing up for me. That's when I know. I didn't go too far, I just finally stopped shrinking. And if that felt like betrayal to them, that says more about them than it ever did about me. People still ask sometimes, readers, strangers online, even friends, would you ever talk to them again? I don't know. Maybe one day. But I know this, if I do, it won't be as the family ATM, or the silent one, or the joke. It'll be as the woman who walked away and built a life that didn't need their permission. Until then, I'll keep writing. I'll keep healing. I'll keep living the kind of quiet, sturdy life that girl in the diary never thought was possible. And when I walk past that bookstore and see my name in the window, I don't look away. Because I finally believe what she was trying to say. All those years ago, I mattered. I still do.